Right now, you are wearing something. Almost certainly. And you did that on purpose this morning, with actual thought. And you didn't find it strange at all. Now go outside and look at literally any other mammal on this planet. The fox, the deer, the neighbor's cat. Not one of them got dressed today. They came with a coat. It grew on them. It repairs itself. It's waterproof. And they have never once had to think about it. You are the only animal on Earth that would die of exposure in most of the places your own species chooses to live. Without help. Fairly quickly. So obviously we invented clothes for warmth. Cold humans, warm animal, borrow the animal's coat, roll credits. That is the story. And it isn't wrong exactly. It's just nowhere near the whole thing. Because here's the part that should stop you dead. Evolution spent an absolute fortune taking our fur off. Millions of years of work. An enormous biological investment to strip a perfectly good coat off our ancestors and leave them bare. And then, having finally got rid of it, we turned around, killed an animal, and put the fur back on. By hand, every single morning. Forever. So, the question isn't really why we wear clothes. It's why we bothered getting rid of the fur in the first place, and what we were actually reaching for when we put it back. Why are we bald everywhere, though? Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. Good question. And you're not quite bald. You have roughly as many hair follicles as a chimpanzee. Yours are just tiny, pale, and useless. We didn't lose the hair. We shrank it down to nothing. And the reason is the single most underrated thing about your body. You are a phenomenal sweater. Not a compliment you'd enjoy at a party. But among mammals, you're a freak. Most of them barely sweat at all. Dogs pant. You have millions of glands. And here's the catch. Sweat only cools you when it evaporates. Trap it under a thick coat of fur, and it just sits there, warm and pointless and damp. Sweat evaporates dramatically better off bare skin than off a furred hide. So the fur had to go, not for looks, for the ability to shed heat. Because our ancestors did something no sensible animal does. They went out and worked in the middle of the day, in the open, in the heat. While everything that could eat them was lying in the shade waiting for evening, our ancestors were out there. Overheating was the thing most likely to kill them. And overheating doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It cooks the organ you're most proud of. Your brain does not tolerate being hot. So bare skin wasn't nakedness. It was cooling equipment. It's the reason you could walk all day, hunt in the sun, and grow a brain this expensive. And naturally, Gramps has heard otherwise. Gramps has a theory. Gramps has been dying to tell you this one. In Gramps' version, we lost our fur because we used to live in the water. We were sea apes. Sleek. Aquatic. Frankly magnificent. That's a real idea people have argued. It just doesn't hold up against the evidence, and almost no researcher who studies this accepts it. The heat explanation fits far better. Though, in fairness, nobody has this nailed down. Some argue sexual selection. Some argue fewer parasites and less fur. Heat is simply the best supported answer, not the finished one. But that's the trade, superb in the sun. Hopeless the moment the temperature drops. Which becomes a serious problem the second you walk somewhere cold. So when did we put clothes on? And this is where it gets genuinely awkward. Because clothes rot. Hide rots, fur rots, sinew rots. Everything clothing is made of is designed by nature to disappear. Stone survives. Bone survives. Ash survives. A fur wrap from 90,000 years ago is long gone, and it took the answer with it. So researchers had to find a witness. Something that was there that lived through it, and that is somehow still around to tell us about it. They found one. It's a louse. Obviously, it's a louse. Here's the trick, and it's beautiful. Humans carry two kinds of louse. They look nearly identical. They live completely different lives. The head louse lives on your scalp and feeds there. That one's ancient. It has been with us since we had fur to hide in. The other one feeds on your skin, but it doesn't live there. It lives in your clothing. That's its whole habitat. Clothes. Now hold that. If a creature's entire habitat is clothing, then that creature cannot possibly exist before clothing does. It has nowhere to live. So the moment clothing appears, a brand new empty world opens up. Some head lice move in, and once they're in there, they stop mixing with the ones on the scalp. And two separated populations start drifting apart genetically at a rate you can actually measure. So you can read the DNA and ask when they split, which dates the clothes. Not from the clothes, from the parasite that needed them. And the first big study landed on roughly 72,000 years ago, give or take 42,000, which is a margin of error you could park a glacier in. And then a second team ran it again with better methods and got something very different, at least 83,000 years. Possibly as far back as 170,000. That's not a small disagreement. That's a 100,000-year gap between two serious studies. And Ivy has been waiting, arms folded, for exactly this moment. So you don't have clothes, you have lice. And your lice can't agree with each other by 100,000 years. Completely fair. It's a proxy. It's an argument about clothing built entirely out of something that isn't clothing. and the numbers genuinely wobble. But notice what both studies agree on anyway. Even the cautious number is tens of thousands of years old. Whatever the exact date, clothing is old, and it's ours. Is there anything you can actually hold? Yes. On the Atlantic coast of Morocco, in a cave called Contrebandiers, and what they found there started out looking like rubbish. Thousands of animal bone fragments, meal scraps, exactly what you'd expect from people who ate a lot of things over a very long time. Except 62 of them weren't scraps at all. They'd been shaped, deliberately. Split lengthwise, cut down, worked to an edge, and then used until they went glossy. These are between 120 and 90,000 years old, and the polish on them is the tell. Because polish is just a record of what a tool spent its life rubbing against. This polish comes from being scraped against the inside of animal skin. Over and over. That's hide working. That's someone turning a skin into something wearable. And it's slow, brutal, skilled work. A raw skin left alone goes stiff as a board and then rots. Every wearable hide is somebody's long, deliberate labor. But the detail that settles it isn't the tools. It's who they were skinning. Sandfox, golden jackal, wildcat, all three with cut marks on their bones. And nobody hunts a wildcat for dinner. There's no meal on a wildcat. The marks aren't butchery marks. They're skinning marks. You don't eat a wildcat. You wear it. The researcher who found it is careful, though. She called it highly suggestive proxy evidence for the earliest clothing. Suggestive, not proof, because there's still no garment. So we invented clothes and kept them? Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. No. And this is the bit nobody expects. For most of the story, we kept taking them off again. Look at the tools across the ice ages and they blink. Hide scrapers appear when it's cold, then it warms and they vanish from the record. Then it chills and back they come. Because for tens of thousands of years, clothing was ad hoc. It was equipment. You put it on for the cold the way you'd pick up a spear for a hunt. And you put it down the second you didn't need it. Nobody was attached to it. Nobody's fur said anything about who they were. It was a tool, and tools get left by the door. Which means for almost all of it, clothes were the opposite of what they are to you. They meant nothing. They said nothing. They were a wall against weather. So something had to change. And the thing that changed it is about 4 centimeters long. What's the hole for? Around 40,000 years ago in Siberia, somebody did something fiddly and strange. They took a sharpened bone and drilled a hole through the blunt end. That hole is the eye. Thread sinew through it and you can pull it along behind the point instead of shoving it through hole by hole. It's the sewing needle. It's still in your house. And the obvious reading is, now we can finally make proper clothes. Fitted, sewn, tailored. Except that reading has a problem, and it's a big one. We already could. Bone awls, just sharp-pointed bone, no eye, no thread, show up around 80,000 years ago, 40,000 years before the needle. Punch holes with an awl, thread cord through by hand, and you get a fitted garment. It works. People did it for tens of thousands of years without an eye in sight. So the needle isn't the thing that let us make clothes. We had clothes. Fitted ones. The needle is for something else entirely, and it's for something small. An eyed needle's advantage is fineness. Tiny, precise, delicate stitches. You don't need delicate stitches to survive a winter. A winter does not care about your stitching. You need delicate stitches to sew a bead onto a garment, to attach an ornament, to put a pattern on a sleeve. The needle isn't for warmth. The needle is for decoration. And here's why that happened exactly then. And it's the best idea in this whole episode. Think about how humans decorated themselves before clothes. You painted your skin. Ochre. Patterns. Marks that said who you were, who your people were, what you'd done. Your body was the notice board. Then the deep ice age arrives, and now you're covered, head to foot. All day, every day, because the alternative is dying. So where does the notice board go? You can paint your skin all you like. Nobody's going to see it. You've buried the entire display under a foot of fur. So the decoration moves. Off the skin, onto the clothes. The fur stops being a wall between you and the world and becomes the surface you show the world. That's what the needle is. It's not a tailoring tool. It's the tool you need once your clothes have to say something about you. It's the moment clothing becomes identity. And then the ice retreats. It gets warm. By every previous rule, this is when we drop the clothes and walk away, the way we always had. And around 12,000 years ago, we don't. We keep them on. In weather that doesn't require them. For the first time, clothing stays when it isn't needed for warmth, because by then it isn't about warmth at all. We never took them off again. Not once, anywhere, in 12,000 years. Now the honest part. This is an interpretation, a good one, argued by people who've spent careers on it, but nobody dug up a garment with beads still on it and settled the matter. A needle can't tell you what it sewed. The lice can't agree within 100,000 years, and the actual clothes, every single one, rotted away completely. We can date the parasite. We can date the tool. We cannot date the thing itself. The first person who wore something because it made them feel like someone is invisible to us. Now come back. It's this morning. You stood in front of a wardrobe in a heated room on a planet where you were in no thermal danger whatsoever. And you still stood there and thought about it. You didn't ask what would keep you warmest. Nobody does. You asked what you wanted to look like today. That's a 40,000-year-old instinct running in a heated bedroom. The needle one. Your clothes are not a wall against the weather. They're the surface you show the world, and they have been since somebody first sewed a bead onto a sleeve. We didn't put clothes on to hide from the world. We put them on and found a new place to be ourselves, which raises an obvious question about those beads. That story's one tap away. I'm the ancient bro. Wear something ridiculous. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends.